You are now listening to the MVP podcast, where we explore the business of sports. My name is Courtney.
And I'm Jimmy.
And on this episode, we talk to Courtney Ksiazek, the Senior Director of Partnership Marketing for the hottest women's sports team in the world, Angel City FC. On this episode, Courtney talked to us about early days at Angel City and how they established their brand, learned who their fans were, and then eventually built a reputation that had them selling out games and bringing in some of the biggest partnerships that women's sports has ever seen. Now, the season just kicked off in 2024 and they're already selling out. And we talked about what that means for their partners, meaning DoorDash, and doing a huge deal that's putting 1 million meals into the community so that people who don't have any food are now getting fed through the work that they're doing, and a ton of other cool activations. This is a really good episode for anyone who wants to learn how the sports business actually works, because we got somebody who's on the ground floor doing the actual job.
Yeah, you never know what kind of jobs you can do in sports business. Like, the partnership marketing is huge. You think like, oh, let me slap a logo on a billboard, you know what I'm saying? But it's actually way bigger than that. And so do us a favor. Let's get bigger together. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to leave a rating on Spotify or a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Without further ado, here's our conversation with Courtney Ksiazek.
Courtney, you are the Senior Director of Partnership Marketing for the hottest sports team in the world right now, Angel City FC. You worked in partnership marketing with San Jose Earthquakes and MLS. You worked for was it US Soccer?
Yeah.
Was it? So you've obviously been experienced and in the sports industry. When you had an opportunity to head west and join Angel City pretty early, what made you choose to go there?
It's been an insane and beautiful journey. Ultimately, what helped me make that decision was knowing the impact I can have on the women's game, having spent a lot of my career in soccer, and seeing it a little bit at the national team level, and knowing all that goes into it and all the things that, not just going to sports, but what women's teams were fighting for, that we can actually make a legitimate difference in how the perception and the realities of women's sports. So ultimately was drawn towards it for those reasons. Yeah, it's been a wild ride since we started this project.
Yeah, so the team was officially founded in 2020, I think, according to PitchBook. But it's not your typical sports team, because I don't know how many sports teams have a Series A. Like, that's just not a thing that you do in sports. So how is Angel City different than the typical sports organization? I'm sure in a number of ways, but just from your experience and like the ownership structure and just the way that they enter the market, like how is it different? What makes them different?
Yeah. So I'll take like another step back too. So the reason we even were considered to even be a team is actually because of the lead up to the 2019 Women's World Cup, when Natalie Portman, one of our 3 co-founders, attended a women's national team game that was happening in LA. And there were signs that said, bring NWSL to LA. But even more so, Natalie was there to support the women's national team players at the time, who were in their own pay equity fight for the Federation for Equal Pay with their male counterparts. And so that was the start of sort of her journey into sports, understanding a lot of the inequities that she saw in the entertainment industry that she was fighting for were actually very paralleled in sports. And she kind of didn't understand why, self-admittedly. So all of that to say, through a number of conversations, it really brought her attention to what difference could be made in the women's soccer space. And so becoming a team was a no-brainer to her, to have a voice and a seat at the table to make all these different changes and to value women's sports properly. And so when the team was announced in 2020, it was really with that notion to say, we want to do this differently. We want to think about our team differently. We want to value ourselves and our players differently. And we don't want to just give that away, essentially, and have someone make all those decisions. It was fundraise in a way that made people buy into the vision versus giving it away to someone who was the highest bidder, which of course all dollars are needed, especially in the startup days, but that vision to be able to bring people in versus sort of giving out what we wanted out of it was really big, and why we were set up so differently with about 100 different investors that have now come across and support Angel City, of course, as with their investment, but in a myriad of other ways too in supporting our mission.
Yeah. And I think early on, NWSL franchises were going for like single digit millions. And then it's been well documented that Angel City's up there in the hundreds, approaching $200 million, which is no small feat because that number is a multiple of what the company makes. It's basically a projection. It's a current revenue multiplied by a story about future revenue, right? Like that's how you get to a valuation. And as someone in partnership marketing, you're telling that story to brands who want to support and they want to be along for the ride. So tell us a little bit about what's partnership marketing is in Angel City. You've got all eyes on you.
Yeah.
How are you telling this story?
Yeah, I mean, truly, our origin story, which I just shared, is a big piece of that because you have to understand our brand to want to buy into what we're doing. And that really starts at the very beginning. So we talk a lot about that and we talk about the difference we want to make. And we're not shy about the investment needed from sponsors, from fans buying merchandise and tickets, from investors themselves to make the difference. It's, been very public that women's sports is undervalued, but the resource is a big part of that people aren't paying for the product. So we're not shy about that either. We don't do trade deals, meaning we don't have just goods in exchange for assets. Like we know that dollars actually are needed to make change. And so we're not shy about that. And one of the things that our activations and our brand have really blended together is through our unique sponsorship model where 10% is going back into the community. So that's a huge narrative that we saw in the very beginning that we wanted to make a statement about what we stood for. And there's no better way to do that than bring your partners into it, but have that constant beat of giving back to the community and making that part of our brand stories. That was something we set out to do at the very, very beginning of the whole project. And now we're 3 years in, actually almost 4 years in to say, okay, like we've done some of these things that we just dreamt about 3 years ago. And it was kind of like, okay, how do we do this? And it's been very cool to see some of those programs really come to life.
Yeah, that's cool. And it just makes sense. I feel a lot of ideas in business, you got to bust out a whiteboard and you got to explain this and that, and they got to know terms, but 10% goes back to the local community, no brainer. And
Yeah.
you have a huge deal with DoorDash. And I think part of that is related to providing meals to people. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's very unique.
Yeah. And it's crazy. You're just reminiscing on this. Like, it's been the early days we spent, working with DoorDash to be our front of kit sponsor. And at that point, we didn't have a single player. We didn't even have our full crest. We had like a word mark we were going off of. Like it was early, but it was the vision and the knowing of what we were actually going to build and the opportunity we had at hand, both of us to be leaders in the space. And so with that program, we've had now in our 4th year of a partnership with them, 10% of their dollars going to feed people in need. And we have a couple of various food programs with our community partner, All People's Community Center, who just does wonderful work. And we've just surpassed at the end of last year over 1 million meals that we've delivered over the course of the partnership. So you can see how we talk about that just the same way we talk about, media exposure and things, and sometimes even more so because it's such an integral part of who we are as a brand and what our fans expect of us, and our partners are integrated so beautifully into that narrative without really having to try, right? We have the resource that they're helping us make this change. So we're actually also on track to surpass 2 million meals in this calendar year. So it's going to be a really exciting year to hit that landmark and just reflect on this partnership as a whole.
That's crazy. So these are the types of programs that you get to design, the type of activations you get to build out with your team. What's it like inside of your meeting room when you're like, okay, I'm going to go pitch this company. What can we do? Like, are you looking to other leagues? Do you guys just think, where is there a need locally that we could support, that we could pitch, or what's that process like? Because I'm sure it's not, repeatable process every single time. It's the exact same. There's got to be a creative element, but what's that look like?
Yeah, so we work hand in hand with our impact team, which is under our community department. And so that's been a whole growth in ourselves of having a department that can help us focus on this. But really, we are listening to the community. Like, what are the things that align with what Angel City cares about, which is we have 3 pillars: equity, essentials, and education, that we fall under to say, okay, to fundamentally change systemic issues that we see, we want to hit on these 3 pillars. And so that's truly talking to the community, talking to groups, networking within that space to say, where is need happening? And so we translate that just like you would for an asset that you want to sell and see what our inventory is. You sort of make that roster of like, oh, this is a program we've been dreaming about. Like, let's get a partner to get on that when it makes sense. So that's how we sort of start the conversations internally. And then as we're prospecting new partners and new brands that we want to work with, we do talk through that like very regularly, right? Like that's our core asset that we're working through. And so we give a sort of sense of like, okay, like this is the type of program we could do together, but we always reserve the right to adjust that should the community needs change. Hopefully we never go through another pandemic, but if that happens, like we may look at this program completely differently, right? And like we want to be a steward of the community with our partners by our side. And we just have a really wonderful and robust impact team that's sort of doing that side, and we blend them together really beautifully.
Yeah, that makes sense because sports are the ultimate local business, right? The ultimate hometown business, because you cannot move the stadium. It's pretty heavy to change locations. So you need the people who live in and around the area or would call that their home team. You need them to take pride in it. So that only comes from investing back. It's like this triangle of value where it's like the corporate partners that you have, the community partners that you have, and then the club, which has the platform. And if everybody can derive value, like that's a great partnership.
It's amazing what you just said, but it's also like, it makes us be a good steward of the community, but also grow our own base and opportunities that people can interact with us as a brand. So we have volunteer opportunities across all of these programs as well. And then we're able to talk about these things publicly. And that just fuels like the same cycle and the same ecosystem of trying to grow, especially in LA, where it's just a huge market. We're trying to hit everyone and we're never going to hit every single human, but the types of people that we want interacting with our brand and buying our tickets and merchandise and all of that, like see us in a different light. And it's a differentiator for us because there's, 11 sports teams here. And that's a tough feat to always be sort of competing with that, but also with
there's 11 sports teams in LA.
Yeah.
Jeez. And they're no small teams. Like, I mean, you got the Lakers and the Clippers and the Dodgers.
Totally. And not to mention the college programs like the UCLAs and USCs of the world that are robust in their own way too. So yeah, it's been amazing to see how we've carved out our own space. And it also proves that like the people who are fans of sports used to be thought of that, like if you're a sports fan, being a fan of women's sports, we were like in the same pool of people. It was the same market that you're talking to, but the reality is it's not at all. And we've only learned that in the last like 3 years. And one of my favorite indicators is our first season, we had a game against the OL Reign, now the Seattle Reign, in our stadium at home downtown. And then across the city at the Rose Bowl, there was a friendly. Real Madrid played Juventus. And while both soccer games at the same time, we both sold out the venues. And so it just shows, one, the soccer fan is different. It's a different person you're catering to. Granted, it's also European teams, but still, like that's an argument to be made that's great. You can be a fan of the Lakers. You can be a fan of the Dodgers. It doesn't stop you from being a fan of Angel City, but we're not banking on you to be a fan of Angel City. There are other people that have never been marketed to, that have never had an opportunity to buy the hat, buy the jersey, come to the stadium to see female athletes that wanted to, that we're simply filling that void in some ways. So that was a really wild time when I realized that was happening. And we've talked about that a lot, just with partners and things, because we didn't, like, no one knew that. And that was just like one of the indicators early on 3 years ago that, is proving itself to be really more true by the day.
That's amazing. And also that's got to be leverage for you when you're talking to potential partners, because it's not just about pure reach. That's a differentiated, and I don't want to even say niche. It's just a different market that you can talk to, and you can talk to them in a way that others, it wouldn't be authentic if they tried to speak your language and do your things, because you live it in a different way. You be in the club. So I think that's a lesson in just understanding who your fans are, which most clubs I feel like would say they know, but you really have to know in a competitive landscape where you have 10 plus teams in one city. That is brutal. So, what's I don't know if you can say this, but like, what's an average partnership look like? Like, do they just pay for, sideline rotational digital assets? Do they just pay for like the kit? I'm sure that they're a big partner, so they've got other assets that come with that. But what's a light partnership look like, and what's one of the bigger, more robust partnerships look like? What comes in that package?
Yeah, I'll share more in generality, but we sort of have our own levels, like many teams do. But we have our sort of premier partners, which are our jersey partners, and each league is set up differently, where you can sell different parts of your jersey. ours is unique where you can sell 2 pieces on the back, one on the sleeve and one on the front of kit. So your front of kit is the most valuable. It travels everywhere with the team. It's seen the most clearly, all of that. And then also your training kit. So we have a training kit partner on the front and the back. And so that has its own sort of narrative. It's the day in and day out work. You're picking up on the media that comes to training. Of course, the regular soccer shares of what are the players doing every day. So that's sort of our top tier. And then we have our next tier called founding partners that really range. I mean, when we really set out early on, I think we were even unsure of ourselves in that range of saying, okay, what is our core partner group going to look like? But it rivals some, small tier MLS teams for what those average deals go for. And then our sort of bottom level is the team partner. And with that, the way we structure it is, there's different, every team's gonna be different, but the exclusivity comes with being a founding partner and above. So that in your category, being able to say the exclusive partner of that category. But you're right, there's a ton of supporting assets that are going into each deal, even if they have a marquee piece like the front of jersey. There's a ton of different things that help tell the story. And so we go through with our internal teams to say, okay, what is the most valuable content pieces we can include? Signage is a big piece, but I would say it's not our most important, right? We have a narrative even outside of the brand that you'll see in the game. That's why we do lead with the 10% as like our main asset that we're talking about. And then of course you're going to get the content, you're going to get the signage, but that's what we spend the majority of our time really talking about with prospects and new partners. So that gives a little bit of the hierarchy and how those deals are put together.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think for the average person, they have no idea really what goes into it. They just see franchise valuations and they see broadcast deals, of which, NWSL as a league negotiated a super juicy upgrade from the previous broadcast deal, which was in the neighborhood of like $1.5 million per season previously. And then it got bumped up. I don't like to do public math, but it's like 60 million. So I don't know how many X's that is, but that's a whole ton of X's.
That's a lot of X's. And it's just one indicator. Sorry, I'm cutting you off now. But
no, I love it. It's good.
It's crazy that's like, it's such a monumental moment for the league to get to that point. But it's just one of the many indicators and the indicators within the ecosystem that is showing the case and the signs for the growth of the women's game, because that doesn't happen unless you have teams like us, like San Diego, like VFC and Utah that have come into the league and sort of just level set and said, we're here to play at a different level. And all the other teams have been doing an amazing job. And we're excited that the whole league is being elevated now, but it takes that plus players doing their part plus media and all of the things that it allows for that deal to even be possible. And now that deal actually publicly raised the salary cap. And that's how you get to pay. That's how you pay the players more, because all those things have to happen together in an ecosystem. So it's a really big deal, pun intended, because it's big in size and dollar, but also reach, that we're going to be easier to find games on Prime and on ESPN, Ion, and I'm forgetting the last one. And CBS.
Yeah. CBS. See, I know CBS because we get CBS up here north of the border. So that's cool. And you mentioned other teams. How much do you talk shop? Do you know folks that are at the other clubs? Do you talk to the people up the street at Bay FC? And they're a new franchise. They're trying to get their feet wet and whatnot. They had a lot of hype around them as well, because the franchise fee that their ownership paid to get them in the league was significantly greater than anything that anyone else had paid previously. Do you talk with your peers across the league?
For sure. Yeah, there's a lot of idea sharing, and especially with how quickly our league has grown, there's been a lot of changes to things like commercial guidelines and just understanding. And with the new broadcast change, there's just a lot of that. And so the historical knowledge that, I and many others have shared across the league is pretty constant. I think our league, just compared to others and the people I know in other leagues, are really, really open to it, because we all need all the teams to succeed, because that's, again, the rising tide lifts all ships sort of narrative. So we're really open about that. And personally, I'm an open book when it comes to the same. We want all the teams to do well. And if we get beat in number of sellouts, that's actually great. Not every team is cheering for their competitors to then beat them. But again, It's a sign of health for the whole league if, our other teams are doing exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, and you need balance in the league. It can't just be one team that's killing. And I had to pull it up because Angel City expansion fee, $2 million. San Diego Wave, another super hot team, they got a $5 million expansion fee, and Bay FC paid 53 million. So there's a little bit of a gap there, a little bit of a jump up in just a few short years. And I think that's a reflection of all the fervor, all the energy and excitement that's going on. And also player salaries jumped up too after that broadcast deal. So a few big transfers up there, I believe in like the 200,000 range, over and above that. But what are some other numbers that you talk about, indicators that show the health of a franchise or the trend? You know, we talked about attendance, we talked about, you know, sponsorship, but what are some things that executives are looking at to see the trends of the league and the health of the league?
I think one of the big things that we've seen is certainly viewership. And while we are just now getting on this new broadcast deal, when we have been on major channels around the championship and as a league, just some of those national games, like they're up there, right? Like they're pretty close with MLS numbers and others. So I think that's been a really big indicator that we've been able to showcase. And for Angel City in particular, I think our number of sellouts has been really significant. We play in a building of 22,000, excuse me, and we had 4 sellouts last year and already sold out our first game this year. And we're actually going for a three-peat and having 3 games in a row sold out, which would be the first time we've done that in the team. And, you know, just having, again, like this ecosystem all work together. So when there are even staffing changes, ownership changes, and upgrades all over the league, like those are all amazing things to see. And so just when we have other teams like also get new jersey sponsor deals or other deals, like we're cheering them on too. So I know there's been a lot of change in that regard and getting a lot of new deals across the league. And, you know, I think we've led that charge a lot, and we have 35 partners that are spanning across so many different categories and pieces of the business. And actually a third of our portfolio has never done a sports sponsorship before. So you talk about the opportunity that women's sports presents. We didn't just go down the line and say, okay, let's get an insurance partner, let's get a bank partner. Like we have those, but it's more about what's the brand alignment, what's the fit, what's something that is going to be groundbreaking, and that actually we have an advantage to do that, you know, some of our male counterparts don't, right? Like we have NYX Cosmetics, they're a makeup brand, like they just signed on to be one of our partners. Like that's a unique opportunity that I think women's sports present itself. Not saying every woman has to wear makeup, Lord knows I don't wear it every day, but it's like that type of opportunity to engage a brand that's never really considered sports sponsorship is a totally different way to think about revenue generation for a women's team.
Yeah, I got a lot of questions. So first of all, congratulations on the sellout. I know how hard
Thanks.
that is. You gotta canvas the city, you gotta do digital, you gotta do out of home, you gotta go hand to hand in the schools.
Oh yeah.
Like what percentage of your stadium would be season tickets versus casuals?
So we have about 16,000 season ticket holders. So that's about half. And that's healthy. And, you know, they're showing up, show rate's great, like all the things. So that's really healthy. But we also have our supporter section, which is unique to soccer. And so
Love that.
yeah, that's like where they're going crazy and doing the drumming and the chants. And we've really, really expanded that. And we have 5 different supporter groups that are represented in our north end that we call La Fortaleza, which is the fortress in Spanish. And so it's like a very communal experience. People obviously come for that atmosphere and they help generate that. So that's like one aspect that is unique in the venue, that they show up and fill that section.
But hold on, and those supporter groups, were they organic? Did you guys plant seeds? Like, how did you get 5 supporter groups?
Yeah, I was not part of that exact process, but basically there was independent groups that mostly existed already that we sort of brought in and fostered a relationship between them. So they have their own sort of identity, name, and group that they work under and host their own events and all the things, but they cool. Sort of unite for our games, which is really special. And yeah, I think there's just been this hunger for women's sports and a women's soccer team, specifically in LA, of course, that's where we are. But the supporter culture and that sort of diehard attitude, like it's not just for men's sports. And so they, you know, between friends and family, there's like, hey, we're going to watch all the NWSL games or women's national team or World Cup, whatever it is. And so now like giving them a product to come cheer for and care about week in and week out in their home it's been really special. So yeah, they do the smoke and the drums, and people come for that, and just
I
I love
I,
watching
I
it
love
go.
soccer fans. I love soccer
Right?
fans
They're
because
nuts in the
in
best way.
they're trying to do the supporter section thing in the who's getting the new stadium with Steve Ballmer. Anyways,
The Clippers.
yes. Oh, in your town.
They are big
But
old
the thing
stadium.
is, huge stadium, big arena,
We're
51
through.
uninterrupted rows of people behind one of the nets, can't wear the opponent's jerseys or colors and all these
Yep.
things you got to do to get into that section. They're taking that idea from the supporters that have traditionally been in proper football. I think the atmosphere of soccer is something that like American sports fans would easily buy into because it is so parallel to the pandemonium of like college sports. And I
Totally.
think pro sports are like traditionally you think of like NBA and NHL, NFL. It's not the same as college sports where my kids are going to go to the same school that I
Totally.
went to, and like they're born and they're swaddled in your school
Yeah,
colors and
it's
that kind of stuff.
generational. Hmm.
Yeah, I think soccer has an opportunity to be that type of thing as well, because if a sports fan understands that passion, they just have to have a reason to cheer. And I think that's kind of the void you're filling for a lot of folks, is like they have a reason to cheer because something they identify with.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this now. So what's next? Like, is it really just head down and building? I mean, you're selling out games. You're you got a huge lead on whoever's next. I guess people don't really look at the value of the sports property as like a metric. It's kind of a nice to know, but it's like checking your net worth every day. Like no one really does that. But like, what's next? What are the goals for you? Is it to just try and continue reaching into the community? Are there new programs you guys want to build? Is it just like, let's try and win a championship? Like, how do you approach it?
Yeah, it's always win a championship. I have very little to do with that on my end,
You
but
sure?
I definitely want that. I know. I would be
Why don't you get
insulting
back out
our
there? I know
players.
you can
No,
play. I
I would be insulting our professional players if I was like, yeah, let me just strap on some boots real quick. But it is a
Yeah,
dream of mine. If we ever somehow run out of players, like I just knocking on my GM's door, like,
there you
hey, just
go.
in case you need like a fourth string
Staff soccer on
somebody.
Fridays, show your
Yeah,
stuff.
that's about my level. That's my level. But yeah, there's a ton on the horizon. I think one main thing that we dipped our toe in last year is sort of the international, both fandom and sponsorship and sort of everything that comes with it. Of course, every league is set up differently, and our league is really growing in that space. But at the same time, it's sort of soccer is always begging the question of like, what are you doing globally? Because it's such a global game. And so last year it was the Women's World Cup year in Australia, and we took it upon ourselves to bring a room together and have a conversation about equity and how do we actually change and foster relationships. So it turned into a 1-day summit that we did in Sydney, and it was Angel City put on. We said, as Angel City, we have the authentic voice and the microphone to say, who else we need to bring on this journey with us, and who else is gathering around the biggest global game for soccer. And we built a really interesting room of brands, media, players, agents, teams themselves, and properties, and really just had open discussion. And something that we saw a lot of value in being our brand of Angel City and fostering that relationships externally, but more so that we are accelerating change around the globe now, just like we have across our league in our nation. So that's been really interesting, and we had a lot of success in that. So you may see some things in the near future of what we do in that space with the Olympics coming up later this summer. So that's definitely one thing that we're thinking through. But really, the beauty of what we've done as a secondary piece of where we're going is we still have to keep growing. I think we are so impressed and excited about the successes that we've accelerated in our league, but the gap is still very much there when we look at our male counterparts. We look at media exposure, like you're seeing it with March Madness and how viewership for the women's game and all the videos you see of naming, can you name 5, men's players versus 5 women's players? Like that's all amazing. It's like, how do we continue growing that? Because there's still a big distance to go. So we still see that as we have to lead in our own league to then rival everything else. But the work's sadly still not done, and we're celebrating the wins, but we really see the long-term vision of pay equity and how do we get there? And that ecosystem needs to keep growing to do that.
Yeah. So there's other leagues that are also popping up, like the USL Super League. Do you have any thoughts on that? And how does that tide rising affect y'all boats, because it's also more opportunities for women to play professionally domestically. And in my opinion, if you have to travel across the world and go play in the Super League, well, it's not a bad gig to go and be in England for a year or a couple years or anywhere else in
Yeah.
the world where they have professional soccer. But, playing in front of your family and friends at home is an amazing opportunity. So what are your thoughts on USL Super League?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, my personal take is more opportunities for players to play, to build skills, and to have access to the game is never going to be a bad thing. I think it's a totally different setup, right? The schedule is going to be totally different. It's going to be on the European schedule where we're not. And just how that whole structure, and as a startup league, like, will face its own set of challenges. But at the end of the day, I think it's a net positive. The history that obviously the NWSL has, although not a lengthy history compared to other leagues, it still has the history and the backing of quite a few folks that I think, hopefully energize the USL the same way that they're energizing us to continue to grow, because I think that competition is healthy at the end of the day. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I think the net positive is there's more opportunity, which, for a long time there was no opportunity and leagues were folding left and right.
Yeah.
So the fact that too, personally, I can deal with.
Yeah. And you know what? I think there's a lot of cool things that soccer offers that other sports don't have, like the interleague matches, where I know NWSL and Liga MX, I'm not even going to try and butcher how you say female in Spanish, but femenil or something like that.
Perfect.
I know they're going to play this year, I believe. So that's cool. And who knows, maybe you get some teams, like maybe teams from the Super League come over from Europe, come play some games. Maybe it's just USL versus NWSL, maybe some South American teams, some CONCACAF action. I think that's another cool thing too, because it's not just about your league, but it's about your city gets to play against the best of the best all around. So I believe those tournaments will continue to grow and pop up as women's soccer internationally continues to grow.
Oh yeah, it's huge. Like, CONCACAF introducing the Gold Cup for women this year, like, that was massive. There's going to be a Club World Cup next year with FIFA. Like, those are things that I think the women's game never, it felt super far away. So the fact that we're even here talking about a Club World Cup for the women's game is amazing. And I think it's a whole different way to, yes, connect globally, both with clubs and provide different opportunities, but also be on par with the men's tournaments. Like, there is a Gold Cup, there is Club World Cup for men. Like, those types of things go a very far way to say, okay, like, we value the competition enough as is to then have these additional competitions, which again has not always been the case. So it gets me really energized that those tournaments are happening, those different competitions are happening across the world.
Yeah, sick. Last question before I ask you the last question, but what size of a partnership deal would get you excited?
Oh, honestly, take the biggest MLS deal, and if we could get that, I'd be stoked.
Do you know what that is?
There's some ranges I've been shared, but it would be make my heart soar if we could say that we were earning the same as a male team, a men's team in the MLS at the highest end.
I love that. Is that like, I have no idea. Like, I'm oblivious to those things. So are we talking like millions?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Double, high double digit millions for sure.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. So, we got some work to do.
Yeah,
but
me too.
I think that is absolutely something that we're going to see. I don't even want to say like in our lifetime, because I'm young. I'm going to live a long time. So it's going to be well before that. But
oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Probably people didn't know. I didn't give you a proper intro, but we played college sports together. I didn't play soccer though. I have pretty embarrassing soccer skills, but
well, I have no football skills. What would I do? I'd just be like
I don't know,
receiver or something and just run straight. I don't know. I got nothing.
No, you'd probably be a DB like me because you got footwork, but I don't know. Can you catch? So yeah. So speaking of skills, who are your 3 favorite athletes of all time? Any era, any sport?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna say this sounds a little cheesy, but Abby Wambach, even though she's one of our owners, it's been like my life has always, I feel like, followed her. And I vividly remember the 2011 Olympic game, I believe, where she scored that crazy header on the Megan Rapinoe cross from like 80 yards out that sent him, technically, it wasn't the final, but it sent him to penalties, which they won. That game has like stuck with me through the years. So she's definitely one. It's hard not just to name our owners, to be honest, because we have so many amazing soccer legends that stuck also with me forever. I have to go with Mia Hamm too. I'm just such a like soccer purist in
OG.
this moment. Also, my screen name was just our names combined back in the AIM days. So haven't told her that yet, but yeah, super embarrassing story. But I was just like, yeah, let's put our names together.
Yeah.
So got to say that. And
Mia
then,
Hamm? Wait, hold on. Mia Hamm is part of Angel City?
yeah, she's one of our
Really?
investors. Yeah.
So you know her? Damn, that's cool. I like her.
We've
She's
met
like,
a couple times.
that's sweet. Yeah, so you're basically like best friends. Not joking.
In professional business acquaintance sense, sure.
Of course. No,
Yeah.
I'm that's kind of me just fanboying out a little bit because she's like one of the original like national superstars. I mean, if you grew up in the 90s, right? Like you were watching Mia
Put
Hamm.
it on the map.
Yeah.
Yeah, put it on the map
That's
for
cool.
sure.
That's
So
really
that
cool.
was a big influence. And then the third, can't not say Billie Jean King, like especially this journey that we're on now, like in my current career and just where I've been as a college athlete. And now like she set the tone and is such a absolute legend that I just can't not say her, who's also one of our investors. So I really went 3 for 3 on the investors, but you can see the influence that Angel City has had on my life, that both before and now during. So it's been pretty special.
Yeah, and you're not alone in that. I know Angel City represents a lot to many people. I'm all the way up here, you know, in Hamilton outside Toronto, and there's plenty of Angel City fans where I'm at. So I think y'all will be happy to know that the noise you're making is being heard up here. And you know, you got people like Billie Jean King. She played tennis and affected soccer, basketball, hockey. You know, that's a legend, somebody whose game transcends the game. So hats off. I definitely agree. So Courtney, I appreciate you taking the time. This has been awesome, insightful, inspiring.
Welcome.
And I think I'm gonna pick up a kit for real. I like any team that has a black jersey, but I think I'm gonna get that with the DoorDash right there. I'll let you know. I'll take a picture. I'll send it to you on LinkedIn when I get that.
Oh yeah. Please send it. We'll make sure maybe you get on some fan content when we do a compilation. I'll sneak that right in there. Maybe get some likes.
There we go. Perfect.
Awesome.
Where can people?
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Where can people follow you and your journey, and where can people tap in with Angel City?
Yeah, LinkedIn's great. Courtney Ksiazek. It's a real complicated last name. So make sure you spell it right. Just kidding. That's a great place to connect. And then Angel City, follow us on all the channels at We Are Angel City and angelcity.com. It's amazing. And we can't wait to have all the fans all across the country and the world. We've actually sold merchandise in all 50 states. I meant to share that, and 51 countries. Ooh. So we're well on our way to building quite the fan base.
Yeah. The Dallas Cowboys of the NWSL. There you go.
I think the Dallas Cowboys are actually the Angel City of, their own league.
There you go. I like that. We'll end it right there.